what is going on, guys? This is Richie here, back again from the Red Planet Films, bringing you yet another movie review, and this time it is going to be for Alien Covenant. Now, just as a bit of a warning, this is going to be a very in-depth review, so this is going to be filled with spoilers. I would do a spoiler-free review, however, I don't think you'll be able to get my whole initial thoughts on the film as a whole, obviously, without delving into spoilers. So if you don't want the movie spoiled for you, get out. Go watch Prometheus. Go brush up on your knowledge on the Alien franchise. Go see this movie. Come back. And then you can further get my thoughts and opinions on this movie. But anyways, without further ado, let's just jump right into this. So I went to the film with three of my friends actually. One of my friends that I haven't seen in a while met us there, but that's a different story for a different time. So I know my friend Jesus, who actually has his own YouTube channel. He and we played through the Alien Isolation game on both of our respective gaming channels. Link to both channels will be in the description box. But anywho, so I'm pretty sure he was a bit excited to check this movie out and everything like that. And I think I even bought him like the quadrilogy like on Blu-ray for Christmas. So I do believe like he watched them and everything like that. So he has quite a bit of knowledge on the franchise. As for my friend Alan, he has his own YouTube channel as well. I don't know if he's too familiar with the Alien franchise. I know he saw Prometheus. I know my friend Jesus didn't see Prometheus. I saw Prometheus not too long ago. Even though I had it on Blu-ray for like a really long time, I just never got around to watching it because I heard like a lot of mixed things about it. So one day, like a while ago, maybe like a year ago, I just decided to pop it in one day. I'm like, you know what, let me just, out of sheer boredom, like, let me just check this out. Because I think at the time I was playing the Alien Isolation game. So when I finished it, I wanted to kind of, brush up on my knowledge on the whole franchise. And I think I'm in the minority here. I enjoyed Prometheus. I thought it was smart. I kind of like the whole God complex thing that they went with, that whole route. And how, things were created. And what happened when the created kind of overachieves the creator. And then the creator becomes obsolete. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And, it is a prequel, and it kind of brought in these different elements that I do understand why people didn't like it. And I do understand that people were looking forward to seeing, like, xenomorphs and everything like that, and we didn't really get that in the movie. But I thought as a whole, it was kind of its own separate entity. I thought it was pretty cool. It raised a lot of questions. Some of those questions were answered in Alien Covenant, and a lot of them weren't. And I think the reason being was because there was a lot of stuff that was deleted from Alien Covenant that were released online. There was the Last Supper scene. There was a scene explaining what happened between David and Elizabeth Shaw, how she repaired him, and when she went to sleep in the stasis because they were heading over to the engineer's planet to get more answers. Stuff like that I feel should have been in this final cut of the film, Alien Covenant, because it just would have helped it make more sense. Especially the Last Supper scene, which was released online maybe 3 or 4 months ago, something like that. I think it was like in December or January, something like that, where it introduces you to the crew. It gives you more screen time with James Franco. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know James Franco was in this movie, he was in this movie for like 2 seconds. But he did have other scenes, and I feel like it just would have helped the audience kind of understand and get to know the crew and the characters a little bit more. So then when they actually finally do meet their demise later on, you feel more attached and you feel more of a loss when that happens, you know what I mean? I'll get a little bit more into that later on, hopefully, if I remember. But basically the film starts off, it's their ship heading on over to Orgai 6. Everyone's in stasis. It's going to be like a 7-year trip. And there is a synthetic android named Walter who's kind of, keeping watch. And an accident happens. The captain pretty much dies, who is James Franco. His pod malfunctions. He burns up alive inside the pod. And, they have to make repairs. They find an unknown planet. And they kind of disobey orders. They go over to the planet because it's relatively it's a quicker route to get there than it would be to Orgai 6. They would have to go back into stasis, and the crew was kind of hesitant in doing so they were like, hey, you know what, it looks like this place has like life on here, not to mention we got some sort of radio signal, so you know what, let's just go on and investigate, see what's good, see what's popping over there. So they head on over to that planet, and yeah, big mistake, of course. So it kind of follows the same almost formula that we've seen from Alien, So there was that familiarity. Ridley Scott returned to direct, and there is a lot of Ridley Scott-esque in this movie. I found a lot of elements from the first Alien with kind of the slow burn aspect. I won't lie, the beginning of the movie was a little bit boring, like that first half hour. But once things pick up, when they finally get onto the planet and things start happening, the tone just shifts dramatically. And then I feel like there's another shift in tone later on in the movie. But what Ridley Scott does so well is he gets a lot of stuff on camera. Some of these shots are beautiful. Some of the best shots I've seen in a film in a really long time. I don't know. It almost seems like he actually did go to a different planet to get some of these shots because it's just breathtaking visuals. And some of the CG was very well done too, like when they're in space, the ship and everything, very well done. Ridley Scott knows how to make a film visually stimulating, and I really enjoyed that. The score was very nice. There were a lot of cues from Prometheus, and it made me feel very nostalgic towards like Alien, even Aliens. I felt a little bit of Aliens vibe in this movie as well. Again, we do go back to Prometheus as well. So just overall I just kind of found myself enjoying like a lot of small subtle things too. Pretty much what happens is when they get onto this planet, they release these spores, this like black looking goo, and infects some of the crew members, and then when that happens, that's when stuff just starts that's when the tone shifts, because it just ends up turning into this really tense kind of horror movie almost. And that's that tension that I really like and enjoy and missed from the Aliens franchise. And I felt like we did kind of get that back. There's a scene where a alien xenomorph, whatever you want to call it, just pops out of someone's back. And it was just so brutal. The sound effects, the way that the character was convulsing, and the fact that they're stuck in this tiny little room just created that isolation and that tension. And I thought that was a very well done scene. And then later on, when that same alien kind of returns and attacks the rest of the crew, that was a very well done scene. And we do get a returning character from Prometheus in the form of David. David comes and helps out the crew by shooting a flare in the air. The alien runs off, and they follow David. And you can tell something's not quite right. David, he's a synthetic android, but he's acting for himself. And Walter, who is the upgraded model of David, watching over, the crew member on, the ship, I feel like he kind of realizes something is off too. He's like, wait, dude, come on. Like, why do you have such human characteristics, Like, you shouldn't be doing this or whatever. And there's a very brilliant scene that had my jaw, like, dropped completely, because it must have been painstakingly long for them to achieve this scene. And basically, this movie in a nutshell is Michael Fassbender playing with himself. And what I mean by that is but this scene in particular that I'm talking about is David trying to teach Walter how to play a flute. And it's Michael Fassbender and Michael Fassbender on the same screen at the same time, and they're interacting with each other. Like, he's passing him the flute, he's playing it for him. And you don't really see a lot of that in movies where an actor is playing another actor. I mean, an actor is playing another character and they're both on screen at the same time, you know what I mean? But very rarely do they ever interact. And that must have been so hard. And it's not like it's one single shot either. Like, the shot's cut, the camera pans back and forth. And it was a very random scene, but it kind of helped explain, how like the differences in both synthetic androids, and it was just visually, again, Ridley Scott. It was very, very visually stimulating. As the film progresses, we do learn of what happened to the engineers, and basically what happened is David killed them all. David released this black toxin goo while Elizabeth Shaw was in her stasis and just freaking nuked them. Like, just killed them all, wiped them out. And there must have been some reason for that, like a catalyst as to what caused him to do that. It was possibly the fact that he was displeased with something that they did, so he just decided to wipe them out, and then he started creating himself. At the beginning of this film, it shows Peter Whalen, from the Whalen Corporation, speaking to David after creating him, and he says, oh, well, I'm going to pretty much live forever. And he's like, what about you? And Whalen's like, bro, get me this tea right over here. You're my servant. And it was pretty much at that moment, you can tell in David's face, like, while he's pouring this tea for this guy, he's like, man, F this guy, you know? And I just find that so bizarre for, you know, a synthetic. Like, he was already thinking for himself, like, in that one scene specifically. And then, you know, it kind of carries on later on, like, in the movie and everything. By the way, this movie takes place 10 years after Prometheus, like, the events and everything like that. So, again, fast forward, it explains why, or shows, rather, David killing the engineers on this planet, and he starts creating himself. He starts crossbreeding all these, you know, different species and everything. And then you also learn that, well, he kind of killed Elizabeth Shaw. He used her as, you know, a science experiment practically. They show her corpse is laying there, and her whole chest cavity is just opened up. And he pretty much creates the face huggers. But here's where things get a little bit confusing, because, you know, we have to find out how that engineer ship lands on, you know, the planet that they visited in Alien. Will we get there? Maybe. I'm sure there'll be another film. I don't know what's going to come next. Hopefully the next film will be kind of the last, where it just bridges the gap from Covenant to Alien 1, where it explains how we get the engineer ship on the planet, because I'll get to it in a second, what David does at the end on the Covenant ship. But David creates the face huggers, and it just gets confusing, you know? So there's a lot that they have to answer still, and, you know, hopefully whatever follow-up comes after this. So getting back to the face hugger, the original captain, who was James Franco, as we all know, he died. And getting back to what I made mention earlier, the Last Supper scene that they had released some odd months ago, there was a little bit of foreshadowing where James Franco's character, Blah, he says he was going to go into stasis early because he's not feeling too hot and he's burning up. He says he's burning up, and then in Alien Covenant, he gets burnt up because his pod malfunctions. So there was that bit of foreshadowing, which I thought was cool. So then it made the second in command, Orem, the captain. He was a bit of a douchebag, and he was the one who gets attacked by the face hugger, because David's kind of explaining to him, showing him, you know, this, that, whatever, how he's like an amateur zoologist, blah, blah, blah. Orem goes to investigate this little egg thing, and then the face hugger pretty much impregnates him, and then that's how the creature that we see later on in this movie, which is, you know, one of the xenomorphs, you know, comes to fruition. Xenomorph, you know, starts wreaking havoc and everything like that. And there's a scene more towards, like, the last act of the film where Walter and David, you know, they're exchanging pleasantries, if you will, and, you know, that's how we come to learn about, you know, Shaw and the engineers, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, they get into a little scuffle, and it's kind of left open to see who ends up winning that fight, David or Walter. And as pretty much our last, you know, main characters are heading back to the ship to go back to the Covenant, you know, up in the sky, you know, we do see one of the synthetics. We're not quite sure who it is, but, I mean, if you're smart, you kind of know who it is. And, you know, they're fighting the alien, this, that, whatever. They get back to the Covenant, and we do learn that it was David who killed Walter, because there was a scene where Walter gets attacked, but his neck heals up. David is not that advanced of a synthetic, so he has a scar on his face, it doesn't heal up. And you really do learn that too when, I forget her name. I'm so bad with names. Daniels, I think was her name. She's pretty much fixing up Walter by stapling a scar on his face, but you question, you're like, wait a minute, isn't he supposed to heal himself? But I digress. Again, going back to one of the deleted scenes, there was a scene where, when the whole crew on the Covenant is entering stasis, and Walter says to Daniels, sleep tight. At the end of this film, they foreshadow that again, but it's David telling Daniels, good night, don't let the bedbugs bite. And Daniels and James Franco's character, they wanted to build a log cabin on this, Origai 6 that they were going to land on, blah, blah, blah. There was supposed to be another deleted scene in their New York apartment where they're kind of, talking about why they want to do that. But I guess it was left out because it would have felt a little bit too long. Maybe the beginning of the film would have dragged on for a little bit. Who knows why they cut it out. Daniels asks David, oh, hey, when we get to Origai 6, can you help me build a log cabin? And David's kind of just like... And Daniels realizes, oh my gosh, this isn't Walter, this is David. And then she's like crying. He's like, sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite. And then the thing just closes. Getting back to what I made mention earlier, David starts puking up these embryos with face huggers in them and putting them with the other embryos of like the whole colonists and everything like that. So that's pretty much going to be the catalyst as to how all these other different xenomorphs come about. Speaking of the xenomorph that is presented in this movie, it's not kind of the perfect life form that we've all come to know and love from Alien and, the films after that. There was a character in Alien that says, oh, you can't kill it, it's the perfect life form. This one in this movie kind of dies easily, almost. And, I mean, I guess it could explain the fact that even in, the comic books and all that, just different, I don't know if they're canon or non-canonical, different adaptations of Alien, that there are different sort of species of the xenomorphs. Because at the end of Prometheus, there was a xenomorph that popped out of one of the engineers, and that's not even in this movie at all. So that's just my thinking that, okay, maybe that there's just different species of, said alien. Maybe these embryos that David laid on the Covenant are going to create kind of different versions of the xenomorph, and then maybe we'll get that perfect life form that we've seen in Alien and beyond. But again, going back to what I made mention of, we need to have a film that bridges the gap from Alien Covenant to Alien, where they land on LV-426, I believe is the name of it. Forgive me if I'm botching the name of the planet. And they see that engineer ship, and then they see the facehugger eggs. And we need, kind of like those final answers as to how that gets there, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of questions that are still unanswered. There are a lot of questions that were answered. And again, just the tone shift from Prometheus to this film is odd, because they were going with the whole God complex thing, and it kind of does follow into this movie. However, it's just a little bit different. Things get a little bit convoluted, and I feel like maybe in the next film it'll kind of help answer those movies. But overall, this movie, I really enjoyed it. Yes, it does have its problems, but putting it side by side with Prometheus, it was a lot better than Prometheus. Not that I'm saying that Prometheus was bad, but I know some people didn't like it. I enjoyed it. I understood it. I kind of appreciated the direction that they were going with it. But this film as a whole, I kind of like that they went back to no, let's aliens. They went back to that direction. But it's just, why did they do what they did in Prometheus then if they were just going to go right straight back this way? You know what I mean? Hopefully I'm making sense. I know I'm kind of pointing in too many different directions. But, I mean, I enjoyed this movie. Getting back a little bit to the acting, however, Michael Fassbender carries this movie. Because, mainly for the fact that he plays two different characters. But Michael Fassbender's a great a great actor. Catherine Waterston as Daniels, I didn't really care for her. From, the first trailer that was released, which I wasn't even a fan of. I just felt like her look was kind of like a Ripley ripoff. I don't know. She didn't. She did it for me in some scenes, primarily more towards like the final act, which again, the final act reminded me a little bit of Aliens because there were like those robots and like just the heavy machinery and just kind of like the setting that they were in, and it almost replicated the ending of Aliens, where the Queen Alien kind of falls down the shaft. Spoilers if you haven't seen Aliens. Whoops, but you probably should because it's a great movie. So it kind of mirrored like that final act, and I really did find myself enjoying that. Again, going back to Cap Christopher Oram, Billy Crudup, I thought he was pretty cool. He played like the douche character very well. He's very paranoid almost too. A standout for me was Danny McBride as Tennessee. I heard he got cast in this movie. I'm like, what? Really? And I think it's pretty safe to assume that everyone thought he was going to be like a comedic relief. Yes, he did have like a couple of, lines here and there, but majority of his scenes were very well acted. Again, the visuals are stunning. The cinematography is always beautiful in Ridley Scott movies. The score was awesome. A lot of throwbacks to Prometheus and even like the original Alien score, just redone by a different composer. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie. Again, we just need a lot of questions answered, so hopefully we'll get that in the follow-up. But, I mean, again, I feel like they should have included the Last Supper scene, some of these deleted scenes, especially ones with James Franco. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, hopefully he got a decent paycheck, but, I mean, he wasn't, like, featured in the film a lot. I think it would have helped learn a little bit more about the characters and have us care for them. There's just a couple of things that I felt that they should have kept in the movie, but I mean, I guess for, its length, just for that sake, if you're interested in seeing those scenes, I will leave the links in the description box down below so you can go ahead and watch them. Hopefully it'll help you kind of piece together some of the stuff that you might have unanswered from Alien Covenant and Prometheus. I'll also drop a link in the description box to Chris Stuckman's explanation on Prometheus, which he explains perfectly well. So for those of you who are lost on the movie, watch that video. It's about like 20 minutes, but it helps you understand it more and the whole lore of Alien and Prometheus and all that good stuff. But anywho, if I had to give this movie a letter grade, I think I would give it a solid B-. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my review. Hopefully I didn't get a little bit too confusing and convoluted for you, kind of like this movie did a little bit with its change in tone. But again, as I made mention, those couple of scenes that I talked about that weren't included in this movie, I will leave the links to them in the description box because they're all floating online. I will leave Chris Stuckman's explanation video on Prometheus in the description box down below. And as I made mention earlier on, we have a gaming channel. I'll leave the link in the description box as well. And my good friend Jesus over at ZEUSIZLOOSE, link to his channel in the description box. As I told you guys, we both played through Alien. And we play a whole bunch of other games as well. So check out those channels if you're interested in gaming. Our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram information in the description box down below. But as I made mention, if you enjoyed my review, like this video, favorite it, share with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, whatever little bit of, help helps us out. And we appreciate it. Most importantly, hit that subscribe button so you can know whenever we upload a new video. And we're going to be having a special announcement soon. Can't quite tell you what it is yet because it's still in the works. So stay tuned for that. Anywho, I am going to go finish my cup of coffee. And I think I might even stream Alien Isolation later tonight. I haven't played that game in a while. I kind of miss it. So I'm kind of in this Alien vibe. Maybe I'll check out Aliens again. Just why not? So anyways, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Blah, I can't speak. Like, favorite, share, comment down below. Tell me what you thought of this movie, Prometheus. Where do you think it, stands against each other? Anything and everything. Let me know in the description box. The comment section. See, it's Sunday. Sorry, my brain is not on. Anywho, thank you all for tuning in, and I will catch you guys in the next video.